In preparation for the 52nd IPA Congress, we will present a number of episodes dedicated to the activities that will take place and its theme, the infantile, its multiple dimensions. Please visit ipa.world/theinfantileonline to explore the extensive program and to register. The 52nd IPA Congress will be held online from July 21st to August 1st, and by visiting our program you can set your schedule to suit your personal time zone. I am Gaetano Pellegrini, and in this episode, Katy Bogliatto, child psychiatrist, psychoanalyst, and member of the Belgian Psychoanalytic Society, shares some thoughts from her practice as a psychoanalyst within a medically assisted reproduction team. Please check the details of the episode to find more information about the author and to download the text of her episode. And to stay informed about the latest podcast releases, please sign up today.
The body, the vicissitudes of the infantile and the sexual, experiences of caesura in medically assisted procreation clinic. In view of the presentation of my paper, dealing with the place of the body and the infantile in the ART clinic, I propose to unfold some guiding lines of reflection stemming from my practice as a child psychoanalyst working in an ART center in the Brussels region, Belgium. Over the last few decades, there has been a growing interest in the world of psychoanalysis to try to think and conceptualize the complexity of the clinic of medically assisted reproduction. It is a clinic that has diversified greatly over the last 30 years, in close connection with the evolution of technology, medical and paramedical, and essentially in connection with that of the cryoconservation of gametes and embryos, increasing the quality of conservation. Nowadays, depending on the jurisprudence, which differs in each country, whether through anonymous or known donations of gametes, oocytes and spermatozoa, or embryos, many couples, heterosexual or homosexual, and single women and men, have the possibility to becoming parents. The evolution of medical procreation techniques has allowed procreation without a sexual act and opened the field of possibility to new family configurations where, from a biological point of view, biological filiation and or the Roman motto Mater semper certa est, Pater semper incertus are no longer indispensable. As for example, in situations where recourse to gamete donation is necessary, or in situations of co-parenthood and or surrogacy. This technology opens the way not only to access parenthood, to the creation of new family configurations, but also opens the way to the realization of fantasies, which for some border on with omnipotence and or oscillate with registers where the boundaries between generational difference and the prohibition of incest are blurred. Situations which call for reflection within the MAP teams and encourage analysts to think about this clinic in close connection with the evolution of our society. On a broader level, as the anthropologist Maurice Godelier points out, during the 20th century, three major forces and sources have modified the form and exercise of kinship in contemporary Western societies. The valorization of free choice, especially with regard to amorous feelings and sexuality, the norm of equality in relations between men and women, and the historical movement of valorization of childhood, attributed basically to the growing importance of the desire for a child. MAP Clinic participates in and enables the materialization of new family models in line with the evolution of society, where the place of the child has changed considerably over time. Indeed, in our Western society, a child is the fruit of a desire and a parental project. Children are no longer supposed to arrive by chance, since the future parent chooses the moment to make procreation a reality. We no longer have children for our relatives to perpetuate our lineage, but above all, to carry out a personal project, that of founding a family. MAP also allows the woman to cryopreserve her oocytes, the social egg freezing, in order to use them later on, giving her time in her life path and finding solutions to the dual destiny of femininity linked to the desire for a child and female sexuality. In this specific clinic, the interplay between the biological, the individual, the cultural and the collective cannot be ignored, nor can the relationship to ethics and jurisprudence. The use of different models of thought, such as anthropology and sociology, to name just a few, seems to me to be indispensable for a rigorous and psychoanalytical approach to the MAP clinic. As a result, the complexity of this clinic can become dizzying because of the multiple vertices that present and open up to approach and think about it, confronting us with the limits of our classical models of thoughts. But it is a clinic where the somatopsychic pivot is omnipresent and in tension, where the desire to procreate, as well as the original conscious and unconscious foundations of the desire, are confronted with the reality of the biological and can take different forms. On an individual level, we know the complexity of the conscious and unconscious trajectories leading to parenthood. We recognize that they are at work from the very beginning of the individual's life, and that they are part of a weaving of identifications, counter-identifications, drive, and objectal relations, all closely connected with the individual's fantasy life. However, each individual who comes knocking at the door of a MAP service, whether in a couple, heterosexual or homosexual, or alone, such as the requests of single women or single men, or in a group for a co-parenthood project, and whatever the life course is confronted with an impasse where the desire to become a parent, whether long-standing or more recent, and its realization, motherhood and giving life with the birth of a baby, is confronted with a hiatus, a rupture, to this something that does not allow, to this something that prevents becoming a parent and giving life, to a caesura, requiring the intervention of a third party, which will be represented by the help of a medical and paramedical team. This time of process in MAP will be a first time of caesura, which will be able to be declined under various forms, where the intrication between the biological, the sensory, the psychic, the symbolic, the intersubjective, the transgenerational, and the relational will manifest at various moments and with different intensities. Caesura between desire and biological reality, between sexuality and procreation, between the represented and the non-represented, between biological filiation and symbolic filiation, where the woman and the man will inevitably be confronted with experiencing a medicalized process that puts their relationship to the body, to sexuality and procreation to the test. It is a painful process, not without its pitfalls, which mobilizes, disrupts, and put to the test the different representations, conscious and unconscious constructions of access to maternity, paternity, and the weaving of parent-child relationship, without forgetting the importance of relations with the extended family and the transgenerational aspect. The caesura between sexuality and conception questions the enigma of the origin of life and its links with the biological, the psychic, and the technological, but also questions and triggers the libidinal and erotic investment of the primitive scene in all patients, whatever their sex or gender, as the original fantasy of the primitive scene that structures the unconscious inevitably links the diversity of eroticism, as Julia Kristeva subtly pointed out during the opening conference of the last IPA Congress in London in 2019. This caesura challenges the classical, idealized conception of motherhood that each one of us has elaborated throughout our development. Images, representations, narratives that have been constructed since the dawn of life and are part of the individual's infancy. This conception is the result of a long individual journey, inscribed in the history of humanity, where the complex psychic weaving of identifications, of Oedipal passages for the little girl and the little boy, lead to the desire for a child, whose conception will be the finalization of the sexual union, sexualized, erotic, and libidinal union of a man and a woman. But thinking about this rupture and this caesura confronts us with deconstructing our classic conceptions of maternity and the conception of a child in the intimacy of the parents' room, such as the classic infantile sexual scenarios of the original scene. Indeed, in MAP, the original scene is displaced. It takes place both internally in the somatopsychic of each patient, but it also takes place on a stage of clinical reality, where the various medical participants take an active part and consequently become various objects of projection and identification. Thinking about the caesura between biological filiation and symbolic and transgenerational filiation, when resorting to gamete or embryo donation, confronts the future parents with the psychic work of weaving representations and fantasies that will unfold in link with each individual's developmental history. Nevertheless, this working through will not avoid the revisiting of identifications, introjections, and projections, elements that are so important for the development of the individual and the bonds of attachment, and will infiltrate from the most superficial to the most archaic psychic layers of the individual, where the unconscious part of the fantasy of the origins will occupy a place and will infiltrate the story that will be told to the future child. The family novel, described by Freud and Rank, remains a core fantasy activity, both for the parents-to-be and for the child resulting from MAP, without, however, neglecting the integration of the unconscious fantasies and representations of the donor, whether anonymous or known. Many authors such as Nancy Chodorow, Melly Mann, Diane Ehrensaft, Joan Raphael Leff, have contributed to thinking about and modeling the various psychic processes at stake in MAP and in the new family constellation. Each man, each woman addressing an MAP service will not only be confronted with the caesura between sexuality and procreation, but will also be confronted with his or her subjective relationship to the biological body, to its psychic representations, and to the traces in the somatopsychic, the embodied body, which is the foundation of the infantile. Faced with hypermedicalization that puts the biological body and its physiology at front stage, the psyche will react as it can, mobilizing a wide range of defense mechanisms to give meaning, plus K or minus K as Bion, to the renunciation, for example, the renunciation of the natural conception of a child, or the renunciation of biological filiation, as well as to the elaboration or avoidance of mourning, for example, mourning of miscarriage, or mourning the embryos not implanting, or mourning the oocytes not evolving. These different psychic reactions, idiosyncratic to each individual, are not always recognized at their true value. However, these losses, all biological in origin, oocytes, embryos, sperm inseminations, will leave psychosensory traces and will eventually form vestiges crystallized at different psychic levels, lining the psychic space of the future parents who may or may not become parents. There is a risk that these traces will be reflected in different ways in the intersubjective weaving of the parent-child bond in the future family constellation, through the intermediary of narrative and narrativity that may be frozen. From the beginning of his work, Freud recognized the anchoring and intertwining of the drive and the biological body, and later formulated the idea that the body is first and foremost a bodily ego. In the wake of Freud, many authors, under the influence of feminist thought, have widened the space of thought on sexuality, sexual identity, gender, and the female body, such as Bines, Chodorow, Fiorini, Balsam, raising the complexity of the feminine and making it possible to think about it in new ways that go beyond the traditional way of considering the feminine in terms of the negativity of the male, opposing the phallic position versus the castrated position, supporting the desire for motherhood on the work of substitution and psychic elaboration that the little girl does from her desire from the phallus to the desire for a baby, passing through the Oedipal elaboration. The links and interactions between the biological body and the psyche, the somatopsyche, put in tension in our MAP process, confronts us as analysts to elaborate and clarify our own models of thought on the body, the embodied body. However, it seems to me just as essential to continue to take an interest in new scientific discoveries, such as those of epigenetics, which broaden the field of investigation of the somatopsyche and its changes with the human environment and the environment in the wider sense. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to discussing with you further at the conference on the infantile that will take place online this summer.